Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have a super special guest today. Did this podcast once before, this YouTube video, and it sort of broke down. I had to leave, and so we're going to do it again. I have my assistant, Desta Barnaby, who has had some experiences and some bizarre contact modalities. She's a co-author of a book that we did on contact modalities regarding all sorts of different ways to get in the field and to pick up material out of the field. And that's a bit what we're going to talk about today. I have Annie Handley, is my other assistant, may drop in. She's kind of interested in this kind of stuff, but she's actually in a meeting right now. But my two guests today are Jeff Kingsbury and Chase Williams. And we've sort of come friends, and I've known Chase for a number of years. And they have a podcast. So I want to talk about the podcast. And then we had a little discussion. We're going to do a free flow about how does reality work, contact modalities. As I describe it, what the hell's going on? Like when you actually go back, and I go back to my 1976 sighting, I realized that when I look back, it all makes sense that the second night I saw the UFO, as it was flying away, it came right at us. And then it made a turn into the north. And I looked at it and I said, that could be from another planet. And then I thought, but what the hell is it doing? It's not doing anything. And then I said, I got to figure out what's going on here. And that is basically the story of my life. I realize it's what the hell is going on. And now we're getting all sorts of different stories that are coming out that indicate that we may not understand very much of anything. So welcome, Jeff, and welcome, Chase. Thanks for joining in. And just to mention to people, Jeff is on with his boat, and he may be out in the middle of the Pacific, so his signal isn't very good, but he's got very important stuff, so we want him to stick around and talk to us. And let's start with the podcast. Jeff and Chase, you guys want to jump in and tell us about the podcast? I've been on your podcast and I ranted it for hours. Desta, I think, has been on. Has Desta been on your podcast yet?
She has.
There you go.
Great guest. We want her back. We want you back too.
There you go. We could have another roundtable like we're doing here. So tell me about the podcast. You guys just started recently, and tell us what you're trying to do with the podcast and how is it going?
I guess can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in now.
I think the idea behind the podcast, I guess, and it's in just the broadest sense, is just to connect people with other people that have had the same type of experiences and those who have really scrutinized the topic. And we have those people on and kind of help inform the general public or so. And we just want to inspire curiosity. And I think that's what we're doing.
And you came from a background of military, but you had the UFO stuff. That's your basic thing that got you down the rabbit hole to start exploring?
Yeah, well, it happened way early in life, and I couldn't really connect all none of the events that I ever had in my entire life experiences really had anything to do with one another. I guess I don't know, but at one point I had a black triangle encounter, really close encounter with my mother, and it just absolutely changed me forever. Like I just thought that either the Air Force has some sort of magical engine, or there's eventually going to be something, some major announcement, or I don't know. And nothing ever came. This thing was so close to me that you could see like how it was put together, and and the fact that we're still talking about it, and no pictures, no evidence, no admission, and it's just obnoxious. So I've been focused on the topic since I was a kid, and I've just never let go.
When you first came, we had a triangle panel, and you and Jeff came on. Chase was mentioning the fact that you might be doing some there was other military witnesses who had triangle settings, that you might be interviewing some of these people. Did that go anywhere? Are there a lot of military people that in your career that had sightings of weird things?
The people that I was originally talking to about triangles, I'll say it comes down to, as you well know, there's the people who have seen it as a craft, and then there are three lights in the sky sightings. The three lights in the sky and the shape of the triangle that is so far away. So the only people promising super crazy stories are the ones that are also hardest to wrangle. So no, I haven't been able to keep my hands on anyone from the military. with the black triangle stuff. But there are, there's just plenty of anecdotes out there, of course, as you know.
Yeah, and Chase, you've got tell us about your background, because you're not some guy we pulled off the street corner yesterday. You got some background in terms of understanding AI and stuff like that. And so tell me how you got sort of dragged into this thing, and how did you link up with Jeff?
I tell you, I feel like I should be living in a box in the woods right now, because the phenomenon just gets more and more confusing. But no, I've had experiences since about the age of 10, classic cliche experiences of light in the sky, following my mother and I down a desolate highway at late at night, early in the morning. I've seen a triangle as well up close, very, very close, right across the street from my childhood home. Massive, the size of a small shopping mall or football field is what I used to say. And I've had experiences that some would probably describe as ghost experience or poltergeist activity, that I never really associated with the aerial phenomenon stuff. But I think now that all of that's connected. And about 3 years ago, I got engrossed by this. So my background, as you mentioned, that is electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, artificial intelligence. I work with automated vehicular systems, mainly ground-based transportation, but I do have some projects that deal with air-based and very little sea-based automation projects. And so, about 3 years ago, a good buddy of mine works for DoD, and we had a conversation about remote viewing and alien abductions and sightings of craft. And that led to me just diving in for some reason. And I dove in, and after about 6 or 7 months of reading nothing but material, including all of your written works, I had an experience. I had a C5, or a human initiated contact event, where I was in the kitchen of my previous home, and I had this epiphany that thought more or less created reality, or was responsible for reality. And I was compelled to go outside, and I went outside, and I asked this question in my head, and lights appeared in the sky. And I asked it again because I wanted to be sure it wasn't a coincidence, and it happened again. And then I did it again. And then my wife at the time came outside and asked me what I was doing. And I said, I think I'm manifesting UFOs. And she said, you're effing crazy. Show me. And I showed her, and she lost her mind and treated me like a witch for the rest of the night. And that's what I've been doing for since then. So it's, like I said, it's been about 3 years. Jeff and I connected on a Facebook group because he was looking for other people that had a similar triangle experience to his own. And I sent him a message, and we connected, and we've been great buddies. Yet I need to go up and get a speedboat or something and find him in the Pacific and crash his sailboat there. I have to get one of those cool sailing sweaters too. Jeff, that's an Office reference, by the way. So yeah, that's my story.
And what's the podcast called? We haven't mentioned the podcast.
Strange Recon.
And you go how often? Once a week?
Every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, anywhere podcast can be found on YouTube and whatnot. And Strange Recon. I named it Strange Recon because honestly, this whole entire experience to me, from my military background. I'm a retired infantryman. This entire thing feels more like a reconnaissance than it does a science experiment or anything else. And that's why I kind of named it that goofy name. But yeah, Strange Recon Podcast. And we're just observers in this crazy display.
It's a great name. It's a great name. And Jeff does an incredible job of pulling in guests like yourselves and others that have, tons of experience and huge bodies of work and research and analysis from different facets. So, I think Jeff and I really want to make sure that it's diverse, that we're not bringing in people that believe the same things, or for that matter, people that even believe or question the reality of the phenomenon itself. It's important to get the skeptics in from time to time, although it can be difficult, especially if you're having personal experiences happen to you on the regular. But yeah, fun times.
And you do the UFO stuff, but you also are open to other weird stuff, because I've made you the offer and you've taken it up, that I may have a chance to interview Andrew Gallimore with the DMT stuff. So you're going to join me for that interview. So you look at all these different modalities in terms of weird stuff and how it all connects, and consciousness maybe being primary and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, you want to go ahead and start, and I'll follow you.
One of the first things I want to say is that the last thing that I was thinking going down these different avenues of contact modalities would be like a link to my past, and the experience would be let's just say that for me, can we use the word psychedelics, or
Sure.
In general, that avenue of that contact modality is so linked to this topic now. And I don't think anyone really knows why. I mean, I think Gallimore obviously has a really cool theory. And what's the name of his book, Chase?
Alien Information Theory.
He has two books, doesn't he? Anyways, but my point is that my first time down that road, I had like this absolutely like reality altering experience that put in perspective to me that maybe UFOs, maybe the paranormal in general, maybe all this weird, goofy stuff that we've pretended is straight up magic for years is real. It's all part of some weird thing in consciousness, and whatever that even means. I use consciousness, by the way, and I'm openly say this. Chase is the brain here. I use consciousness all the time. I have no idea what it means. I have no clue.
No, I don't know what it means either, Jeff. You're too kind about that.
And these two people will have a friendly acknowledgement of one's theory, and then they'll turn around and go on someone else's podcast and be like, he's wrong, I'm right, or she's wrong, I'm right. And I still don't even know. So I don't even know what any of this means whatsoever. And that's what we discuss all the time.
Well, we understand. I think we understand the basic blocks here. I mean, I don't think, certainly there's a part of the population, the overall global population, that doesn't understand this stuff, isn't familiar with it, isn't educated on it. But I don't think that the leaders, if you will, or the subject matter experts in the field, or in these various fields that all link together, would argue that non-locality or non-local consciousness is a real thing. It's been proven in scientific studies, Noetic Institute, on and on. Over the past 100 years, if not longer, there are 50 to 70 papers that I'm familiar with that all prove, to one degree or another, modified double slit experiment, and utilizing some form of thought to change the outcome of that, versus some kind of instrument to watch, the particulates through the slit. That being said, I'm of the firm belief now that, Grant, you and I and Destin, Jeff have discussed before Donald Hoffman's work, right, and his theory of consciousness, or his theory of everything, and that there's this field of consciousness the same way that there's a field of electromagnetic energy or anything else, and part of that theory is that space and time are derivative of consciousness, and that consciousness, really the field of consciousness, is all that there is. And I think there's some truth there, if that isn't the truth. And so, yeah, my research went from, I started with cattle mutilations, and then on to aerial phenomenon, UFOs, connected with the team at TTSA and Lou Elizondo, and worked with them. I started to build a sensor system for a vehicle to go out on serious expeditions in the middle of nowhere, and all of that has led to this focus on the nature of reality and consciousness itself, And that's where Andrew Gallimore's book comes in, an alien information theory. Now, Gallimore, when you and I talked about this via email a few days ago, he theorizes that that substance is a means to exit the simulation, right? More or less. And I don't know if I agree with that, but I know in my experiences in Peru that I could certainly see how somebody would think that or could potentially theorize that. But he seems pretty adamant about that. As does Strassman. Now, I don't know if Strassman agrees with the alien information theory, but Strassman absolutely is convinced that, this is a means at least to perceive other parts of reality that we don't typically perceive. So, so my hope is that through that study, we can hopefully get some answers as to what aerial phenomenon is and what cryptozoological events are and missing 411 stuff and poltergeist activity, all the above.
Yeah, I think we're at least in the area where people are starting to look at. I don't know if you saw the video that Paul Stamets just did, the mushroom guy, and he's working on regular mushrooms, but he put the thing up that there's 40 labs now in the United States and 20 in Europe that are working on psychedelics, that this is like this revolution has just taken off. And so let me ask you a related question, because where I sort of divert from Gallimore is still this idea that that matter creates consciousness, and sort of he's in a box where he's got all these old ideas that so you're an AI guy, and when you were bringing up your AI experience, I immediately thought to ask you the question, what do you think about the contention that eventually we're going to get AI and we're going to have stuff that's conscious and has its own consciousness and stuff like that, where you can move consciousness into like a ship or a car or something? And related to that, the $64,000 question, what do you think of the Tesla car that went off the road in Texas? What, is that a setback?
No, and actually that most recent incident, it's very unlikely that autopilot was engaged. I think Musk has actually announced that he's sure that it wasn't engaged. So it looks to be just human error at the very least, or alternatively, it could be that the operator of the vehicle was trying to engage the system in an area in which he wasn't supposed to. So, where the crash happened, it's not designed to be automated in that kind of environmental system, which is referred to as an operational design domain in my line of work. So no, I don't think it's a setback at all. There are going to be lawyers and organizations that point to it, but no. To answer the broader question about AI, I mean, in the near future, at least for the things that are available to the general public and not the Defense Department, say, we are quite a ways away from what's called general artificial intelligence. That's something that's just as smart as a cat or a rat, or potentially even smarter. Now everything operates on what's called narrow artificial intelligence. So these are algorithms that adapt to inputs and spit out outputs. They're very advanced, but it's not the same thing as something that thinks for itself. Eventually we'll get there. Whether or not that will be the same type of consciousness, I don't know. I mean, if my own personal theory of consciousness is at all accurate, I don't think we'll ever get there. But that's not to say that we won't have machines that will think in a very similar fashion to the way that humans do and make decisions in a very similar way. I mean, this is something that comes up in my industry all the time with self-driving cars. And I'll be at a conference or I'll be in a board meeting and somebody will say, well, what happens if somebody walks out in front of my self-driving car with an AR-47? What does the car do? It just stops and they shoot the car up. Of course, this kind of thing only happens in the United States, right? But yeah, that was a joke. But I mean, it's a legitimate question, and if it was half as smart as a human or as smart as a human, the car would either try to run the person over to protect the occupants, or it would back away really quickly, or, whatever. So these are referred to as edge cases. And I actually work with one of the leading organizations in the world that has one of the broadest sets of edge cases. They have their own neural network that just has edge cases, anything you can imagine, with kids in Halloween costumes to kangaroos jumping across busy city streets in downtown Chicago, things that are very unlikely to happen. So as they build that, these machines get smarter. So I think we'll get there. But I don't know about transporting your consciousness or my consciousness to a machine. I guess in theory it's possible. That's way above my pay grade, Grant. I don't know.
What about the government? And maybe Jeff, you can jump in too on this. Like, what do you think they've actually got? Because you hear all these, stories about, they've got this, they got that, they're shooting them down and all this kind of stuff. Do you think they've made any headway on this problem? Because that they're looking at it same as you and I are looking at it. You're just trying to figure out like what is going on here. And then you get indications where, for example, Jim Semivan comes up and says, they're ultra terrestrial. They created us, and they communicate in symbols, which indicated that he seems to clearly indicate he has some idea what's going on. So in your experience, you may not even have any experience. Do you think the government is got like a real deep program where they're making some success, or are they stumbling around the same as you and I are?
If I'll jump in here, I personally, I don't know how much I dig in or buy about some of these stories where the briefings are happening between, major officials and certain individuals. And I absolutely believe that they've actually happened. I just don't know how much acknowledgement they're actually given and how seriously they're taken. But I mean, with anything, you're going to try to understand it. Let's jump back to 2004. If you dropped a piece of basic Army equipment, like a frequency hopping radio, it had means of destroying itself. So just so like the enemy can't pick it up and touch it, like it has just the most basic radio. And to relate that to like an alien craft, wouldn't they also have the same measures? Wouldn't the technology be so foreign that it makes no sense to us, and it would take far longer than just a few decades of poking and prodding it to make it work? And if it's run by consciousness, wouldn't zero progress be the realistic outcome? It would just be, you'd be looking at something that you have no frame of reference for. And of course, if the lore is even close to being right, and I think, the late 80s, early 90s lore of ufology, I would say that if that's the point that we're at, I would say no advancement is being made. And I don't know. And I think that you can be just as theoretical with an idea like, let's take the Bledsoes. Yeah. Let's take the woman in white idea, or the idea that there's like a visitation happening between that. Are we to be sure that because this thing is happening, I know it's happening everywhere else, but this is the representative for them, all of them, all of consciousness, or all of, like, say, other life out there, this one being that's, I get very worrisome when I hear like a completely benign and benevolent, whatever. I don't know. To answer your question, I don't really think that we know what's going on. I think that there's multiple conspiracies going at once, one of which being we have amazing technology we're trying to hide, the other being UFOs, being aliens or hyperdimensional or whatever, are real. And of course that there's that we might actually have some of that, or our adversaries might actually have some of that. Anyway,
we'll let Chase jump in, but let me ask you as a follow-up to that, and both you can answer this question. Do you think that you were chosen? Do you think that yours is a random experience where you just happen to be in the wrong place, or are you part of this whole mystery? Was your sighting intentional or random?
For myself, I'd say that as a child, dying, I think kind of was part of the beginning of it all. So I don't know if that had anything to do with being chosen or not, but I choked on a sandwich and died. I died for kind of a significant amount of time. And I think that
that's the thing. 39% of all experiences have had a near-death experience. UFO experiencers, and I don't think
Yeah.
that's chance. And so,
I mean, and if that's maybe why I got to see the amazing things I've seen with plenty of other witnesses, like I'm happy to talk about my experiences, but that I wouldn't understand why me. I don't like myself enough to say that I'm special. It doesn't make any sense to me that why I'd be chosen. But yeah, I don't know. You know, I have experiences other people have seen with me that even they walk away being like, there's no way this happened. It was, never mind. I'll just think about something else in the next 20 years. You know, it's like, so I don't know what to think about it. Yes, I do think that it's rare, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe
let's go to Chase, and then you come back and tell me one of those stories.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you know, I think, look, there are a couple of things that stand out to me. I don't think I'm special. I don't think I'm any different than anybody else. I think if Hoffman's theory of everything is accurate and time and space are derivative of this field of consciousness that might exist, then we kind of already, we can make the assumption that time is an illusion, which is a common thing that comes up in these things, right? We can also make the assumption that separation is an illusion as well. So there is no distance and there is no time. And if that's the case, then everything that could happen, that did happen, that is happening, is all happened and is happening all at once, all in the same spot. You know, but to extend that thought out a little bit, I've had two key figures tell me the same thing over the past 24 months. And I know they don't know each other. And they both said that, well, they've both said that what we think about influences what we perceive. And that seems so obvious to say. But, you know, here's a red box, it's red. But I mean, it goes much, much deeper than that. I honestly think that, and we've had this conversation before, Grant, when you start to focus on the topic, you experience more things. The further down the rabbit hole you go, the crazier stuff you start to experience. And that absolutely happened with me. You know, I first had the C5 experience, then there was another C, and then it was like a C5 experience almost every night. And poltergeist activity in the house. And this was all that I was thinking about at the time. Fewer distractions from work and whatnot. So, you know, I think, I honestly think these things are a part of reality. And if we change the way that we think about things, we can perceive some, if not all of this stuff. And you know, as Jeff just said, you know, if you have a strange experience and you don't have anybody to really talk to about it, likely most people just put it to the back of their mind and they don't talk about it. They don't talk about how when they were 13, all the doors in the house closed all together all at once, and that, you know, they were in the house by themselves and there's no explanation for it. So, you know, maybe I just imagine that. I have a good friend of mine who's had some incredible experiences, stuff that he tells you about him. You go, that's incredible. But he has rationalized all of his experiences. Well, it was sleep paralysis and it was an optical illusion. And, you know, it was really bizarre, but, you know, logically, I can't explain it. So there's got to be a logical explanation for this. And I think a lot of people probably revert to that instead of understandably obsessing over it and spending, you know, buying every book there is on the market and trying to talk to every experiencer there is. I think we're in the minority.
Back to you, Jeff. Give me one of these very bizarre experiences that you've encountered.
All right. Well, that's you know, I think the absolute earliest I can remember some crazy event as, you know, like I said to you the first time I met you, Grant, or Desta as well. Like I had no idea that these were even related to the same topic. I think Chase even said that a minute ago. I mean, I absolutely don't understand it. But when I was a child with my brother, we walked into this this fort we had in the backyard, and it was covered in, remember, booby traps? You put these traps all place, no girls allowed type of thing. And we get in there, and on the floor of this thing, of this fort, is this what looks like a feathered star. It looks like it has feathers and little spores and pearls all over it. It was the weirdest looking thing we ever saw. It was a starfish, upright and walking. Both my brother and I, it was only like 50 feet from the back of the house, took off running as fast as possible to get my father. And of course, the same guy gave me the same response 40 times, 40 different events. Not literally 40, but it would be, oh, you're full of shit or something. And then we'd go over and look and it'd be gone. And my same brother was, with us when things like that would happen all the time. The next major one that happened that really concerned people, because the babysitter was witness to it. Liz Fryery is her name. I haven't talked to her in years, but I'm walking, and this is where I kind of disagree with you guys a little bit about thinking about it brings it on, because quite frankly, I can't seem to manifest or have an experience when I really spend weeks or months on it thinking about it. It comes like I'm walking along, and then all of a sudden something will happen. Like I am completely, I'm not thinking about it whatsoever. And I'm walking by the horses right from the swamps where I live in south of Boston area, and I hear a thud, and I look over to my right, and there's what looks like a pipe or a large fire hose or something, and it's like 8 feet long. And I get up next to it, and I realize it is a snake, and it's a strange looking snake. It's a tan snake with a weird lizard looking like head, and it is chopped into bits except for a few spots, and it's still alive, and it's spinning, and it's rotating over on itself, and it's spinning right in. The only way I can express what it looks like is it was on an invisible shish kebab over an invisible fire, and it was hissing and biting, and it was, because its head was lopped off, it was biting at nothing, and and you could hear it. It was like, in the death throes. It was wild, and I screamed. I was a child. I screamed. I was like, holy, the biggest snake I ever saw in my life. I thought it was someone's exotic pet. Here comes the babysitter, comes over. She screams. She'd never seen anything like it, because it's moving. It's spinning. And it's not spinning like it's rolling over itself. It's disconnected in many of the spots. So it's like connected by some sort of invisible. It was insane. And she dragged me away. She turned around to go back to look for it, and it was gone. This thing wasn't going anywhere. It was not connected. It was like a slinky with 15 different. It was just absolute. But event after event, and we'll just jump to the one that really pretty much solidified that either there's a technology out there that is absolutely beyond, Arthur C. Clarke, there's a beyond that law, beyond it. It's beyond magic. It's beyond what consciousness as we know it, or we're trying to articulate it. We're trying to be philosophical about it. 8 friends of mine were in a warehouse in Paul Dever, Mental Hospital. It's formerly Miles Standish. I told this on your podcast during that triangle thing. I mean, people often say they see like an upper body of something. They never see a full body. I am one of those people. I'm in that camp. I got to see an entity or something, but it was only the upper body. And it scared the living hell out of us. It scared us out of that building. We all got a great look at it. We all to this day, we talk to each other. That's the only thing we talk about. We talk once every 3 years or so. And for me, it was this alien encounter that changed my life. It was this horse-headed mutant looking gray freak, solid white, but looked kind of like a gray, kind of, I guess. I don't know. But for everyone else, it was a ghost story. They just kind of moved on. But when I had my first psychedelic experience, that's when I had nothing on my mind about the paranormal whatsoever. I was there to get PTSD treatment for veterans. And I'm over there saying some chant, saying some mantra over and over and over again to try to relieve myself of these PTSD problems before I consume this thing. And sure enough, the second I do, it's just like I slip away to this black void where all these other entities are doing their own thing. They're looking at me like they're disgusted by me. And then I hear that, I have this interaction with this giant headed thing in a cloud, and it told me if it didn't scare me out of there, we would have been taken by some guy down in the steam tunnel. Someone was hiding from the police down there. and it quite literally showed me some kind of plump guy with a bent nose and a scar under his eye, and he's sitting there watching TV. I froze, didn't know what to do, and I'm in someone's house looking at someone's face watching TV, and they don't know I'm there. I'm looking at them, and it told me that this guy was hiding down there, and if it hadn't have scared us all out, that I would have went down there and he would have, you know, got us. I don't know, maybe had a gun or something, but it was in the event. By the way, we went back the next day. We checked the thing that showed itself to us was 40 feet off the ground, had gone through a steel plate wall, and somehow managed to be solid white. I don't know how to even describe it. It emitted no light like it was shining, but yet when you looked at it, it was solid white. You know, it was absolutely wild. And yeah, I haven't had anything crazy like that happen since, but it's I've had a bunch of weird quick sightings here and there, and just stuff that I absolutely thought would be, you know, I'm one of those people that I've been to war. I'm a trained observer. I have all these things that set me up to kind of like be aware and hyper alert, hyper vigilant stuff. But I'm like afraid to look up in the sky when I'm walking around at night in northern country. There's so many stars up here. You guys are from the northern country. You know, you're from. I guarantee that your average night sky is so much more impressive than say where I lived in New York City or in Boston or Detroit. And it's, you know, up here where I'm at now on the boat, I'm like walking around at night like a cat walks around looking for owls and stuff. Like I'm like, you know, it's uncomfortable, and I hate being this way, but it's just because what I've seen come out of the sky over our heads. You know, it's just I don't know. I don't know if Chase is that same way, because I think the relationship that Chase has with the phenomenon is far different. He's got that CE5 approach to it, and if I could get that outlook, I feel like I'd be a lot different, but there's something uncomfortable. I don't know.
Before we go to Chase, let me I just make a point that usually it happens. The contact modality theory is it happens when your left brain is shut down, when you're not thinking about it. It's like when you were in dreams, like they'll come to you in dreams because, you know, your rational analytical mind isn't trying to, when you try to manifest it, it's your ego that's trying to, you know, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out. And you mentioned the thing about the military. You know the story about the Skinwalker Ranch, and Chase can jump in on this because he's had conversations with Lou Elizondo, is the idea where these special forces guys go in and they get stopped in the middle of the road and they say, leave, you are not welcome. And according to that's what Bigelow says, when I heard what they did to the government guys, I decided it was time to sell the ranch. And and I heard the stories about the wine bottles flying through the room, smashing off walls and stuff, and all the roommates move out and stuff like that. So you're telling basically the same story about the military, because you get this impression like we're doing this study now at the Senate, and we're gonna figure out how these things work, and they're in our airspace, and we're gonna get them. And you seem to be telling the same story as the military guys at Skinwalker Ranch. Is give your head a shake that they're going to tune you in if you decide you're going to take this on. That we have nothing to take this on. That you can be the toughest, biggest, macho military guy in the world, and this thing will bring you to your knees.
Yes, and the thing that I've been leaning more and more this way, and I know it's all speculation, right? But I've been leaning more and more this way every year. I feel is just that if it was this ultimate supreme technology, you know, use your mind to what we could absolutely be. But even beyond that, what are we to these things? You know, and I hate to even put, because I have all these notes from watching all these interviews with Lou that I just watched because I want to go back, kind of freshen up. And he just did like a press conference. I don't know if you guys saw that. He did a press conference on Nap's channel, I think. And anyway, but it's this threat aspect of it. Not to say that they are so powerful that they could do whatever they want. So why even not think of it like that? But I would say that it's pretty much futile to push this idea that they are a danger. They're out there doing dangerous stuff to people all the time. I don't think that's the way it works really, unless you manifest it like that. I don't know. Maybe that's actually happening, but I don't know. He mentioned threat, adversary. He mentioned the trouble we might be in because we're not dealing with this threat. Yeah. He mentioned that he didn't want to say the word conspiracy, but that there, adverse stuff going on at work here behind the scenes that makes it seem even more dangerous. To me, it's, I don't know. I suppose it could be. I mean, scientists actually scientists preserved elephants, but it was actually scientists ordered 40,000 of them dead when they thought they were going to revive the plains of Africa. So it's like, we don't really, even though they're not doing anything bad to us, they could be, just as brutal decision-making wise when it comes to, their interaction with humans. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, one thing Knapp did say is this manifestation, and Chase can jump in here because he's talked to Lou, but Knapp said those who were the most aggressive to the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch had the worst experiences. And this is the idea that you are part of the experience, where people think, this is where I was talking about this thing, is this a random event? Because people think it's a random thing out there. I'm a random thing, and I just happen to run into it, and there's no connection. And the more I look at it, it appears that we are part of what we're seeing, that we are not disconnected from it, and that, it's not the random thing that people think it is.
I just want to say too, sorry about the noise. I hear a giant crane right next to me. But one thing is too, the first time I met you in Desta, I said this could be a lasting effect, and I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just my own guilt from war or whatever. But I truly do feel like there has been a change in my experience of my interaction or whatever, my relationship with the phenomenon, if that's what you want to call it, after my time in war. Like deliberately, I even though I was a lurker, I was always on this topic. I used to call police stations and newspapers and military bases, asking all these probing questions. I really do feel like fundamentally there is something that has changed after my time in war. Now, whether that be what we're talking about right now, or maybe that's just on my own subconscious, but to me, why would you bother interacting with the most brutal of the humans down on planet Earth? You know what I mean? Like, why would you, out of all this place is crawling with organisms, out of all the things here, why would you want to, and not that nature's any more peaceful, but in general, it's just, I kind of feel that has something to do with it. Though I've had sightings of UFOs or UAP or things like that since, it is not like the interactions I had earlier. Maybe it's just like the phenomenon, like when children kind of scale out of it. I don't know, maybe that's what happened. But either way, because I was a young man, but I just feel like that has something to do with it.
Okay. Chase, jump in.
Yeah, I think, to Jeff's point and to your point, Grant, that's what I meant. The more you study this, the more you start to think about it in the background versus in the foreground, right? And I think that's probably what causes an increase in frequency of events to occur. To talk about Skinwalker, I've heard the same things. I've heard from people that were out there that, some really horrible, horrendous injuries have occurred to former or current military, people within the military that go out there, especially if they're armed. My thought is it's some form of amplification. Like you said, Grant, you go out there and I'm ready to deal with this. I've got a gun. Anything comes up near me, I'm going to shoot it. The portal, whatever, ghost dog. It's probably not the right attitude to have. Maybe it is like a reflection of whatever you have buried inside of that head of yours. And then on to Elizondo's pitch about the aerial phenomenon being a threat or potentially adversarial. I honestly don't think he believes that. I think it's part of his pitch when he was at the Pentagon, when he was trying to sell this, and it's just stuck with him. And maybe it's intentional. Maybe the idea is we have to get people, the general population, to take this seriously because it's real and it's here. And if we don't frame this the right way, they're not going to take it seriously. So maybe if we say it's potentially a threat, it's potentially adversarial, it's potentially human developed technology, then people will pay attention to it. That being said, Lou, over the past, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say that this all came when a bomb drop moment when he brought up the our nuclear technology. The media basically was just like, holy cow, like he said that he said they came here and they shined a light down, they shut down nuclear technology. Somebody's like, and then, you're leaving that to people that sell fear for a living.
Yeah,
I'm not saying, like, you might be right. Lou probably doesn't actually believe it in that same manner, but I just mean just the idea that all these keywords.
and Lou, and I was going to mention there's a podcast called Two Seals and a Walrus. Not to take attention away from Grant and Des's podcast or our own Strange Recon, but there's another podcast called Two Seals and a Walrus, and the main guy there, the walrus, has said the same thing that Lou said to me years ago, and that's that. Actually, this is what Lou told me immediately after I had my first C5 contact. I had that event. The next morning, I called Grant, told Grant, Grant, you and I, we talked for an hour or two after that, immediately after it happened. And after I talked to Grant, I called Lou, and I said, Lou, this just happened. Lights appeared in the sky. They were answering a question that I had in my head. The question was, thought controls reality. Simple as that. Thought creates reality. And Lou said, yeah, this is something that we used to be able to do that we've forgotten we could do. And that's what he said. And that's exactly what the walrus on Two Seals and a Walrus said on a recent video. Somebody asked him, he said the exact same thing about that. So, I don't know, but then the question is, what in the world are the lights in the sky? Is that, what is that? If it's not an alien vessel from another planet in this three-dimensional reality, and then to further complicate the question of things, I think that based on our observations in the science and academia, that it's highly probable that we are not alone in this galaxy or this universe, that life is very abundant, physical three-dimensional life is very abundant, and that these other intelligent species that have the capabilities to traverse star systems and galaxies have visited this planet before. I mean, Sagan in 1962 or 63 wrote a paper for NASA about interstellar galactic civilizations traversing space, and his theory in 63 was that we'd been visited something like 6,000 or 7,000 times by different species. So went off on a tangent there, but I honestly, I don't think Lou truly believes that this is a threat to humanity or to the Earth. I think that's just part of the pitch.
Okay, let me make a point on that, and then let me ask another question on Lou. I've said that before because I did the presidents, and I know how this thing started. And I'll absolutely maintain this thing started not with Tom DeLonge. It started with Hillary Clinton and John Podesta. And at that time, the big cheese was not DeLonge, it was Leslie Kean, because Leslie Kean had written this New York Times best-selling book. And if you look in there, they were pitching, Podesta and her were pitching that this was a threat to airline traffic. And of course, I guess the Congress went, get the heck out of here and don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. And so that's the old thing. You've got to pitch it. Even John Alexander said, he had this advanced physics theoretical working group in the 1980s, all these top secret SCI guys in there, and they're trying to figure out how it works. And they were pitching it as well. They were trying to get money for research as well. And that's what he said. We use the threat thing too. You got to use it. Otherwise, nobody's going to give you any money.
Right. Yeah.
And Dest, have you got a question to jump in here on something?
Not yet, but I definitely will.
Okay. There was something else about Lou, about this whole thing, but it's sort of escaping me now.
Can I ask you, Grant, since you've been talking to me for decades, it's my turn to ask you questions.
Good. Go.
What do you think about what did you think about the triangle footage off the Navy there? I mean, let's just go back to nuts and bolts stuff. What did you think of that video through the night vision of what looked like a pyramid or triangle or what? I don't know what.
Well, I think I didn't really follow the story that closely. I just said it was pretty weird that we got this triangle book and suddenly they got this another triangle. My key thing is the idea that it's leaked. And this is this idea that I say, like Lou Elizondo, when Lou Elizondo left the Pentagon in disgust, that I'm resigning, I'm out of here, you're not doing what I want. And then suddenly he's got these videos. And when you resign in disgust, you were in the military, you walk out, they don't give you the videos when you leave. I mean, this is not how it works. And I always said, how did the videos get out? Whether they're classified, unclassified, whatever, they got out. So when the fact they leaked this thing, again, indicated to me the government wanted this thing out. They wanted this thing leaked because they got this plausible deniability. Nobody's really questioning, like, how does it get out? They just say, oh, another leaked video. You see another leaked video. And everybody has an argument about it, and that's what they want. The thing that interests me is that what you see is they're doing the triangle things. But if you listen to what was the whole thing at the Nimitz, I saw the latest interview with Fravor, where he's talking about, well, what did you see? I'm up at whatever it was, 20,000 feet or whatever. And what did you see? Oh, it was this thing. It was at the ocean. And what was it doing? It was bouncing around like a ping pong ball. And I said, holy shit, that's what I saw in 1975. It was called the bouncing ping pong ball. It was bouncing around the sky, 8 inches of the field of vision. And I went, that's unbelievable. This thing's jumping around. And the question is, like, why would the intelligence do this? You got these F-18s, and they're bouncing around like a ping pong ball. Then they send some craft under the water to make bubbles, big bubbles and stuff like that. And then and Eric Davis said that was the last time the Tic Tac thing was seen, 2004. Then in 2015, they appear as balls inside of cubes. And now we got triangles. And the phenomena keeps changing what it's showing. It's not the same phenomena every time. It's always even this triangle is different than the last triangle that they leaked. The other one looked like the Batman balloon. And it wasn't a Batman balloon because Desta and I would know that a Mylar balloon in Winnipeg, you take it at 20 below and walk out of the store with a Mylar balloon. By the time you get to the car, it's deflated. Because that's how it works. So there's no Mylar balloons at 35,000 feet that are completely intact and all the edges are very clean on it and stuff like that. So that's the part that sort of got me, was the fact that the phenomena is not revealing. It's doing this theory of, wow, this weird, take a look at us, what do you think? But they're not confirming anything. The same as the government's not confirming, almost like they've learned the thing from the military. And I think what they're doing is leaking the videos, these films and stuff, where they're just trying to raise the consciousness so they can get funding. To me, it's always about funding, whether they're the threat thing. I agree. I don't believe they believe the threat thing. They're trying to get this, this whole notion about the fact that there's something there that we just simply don't understand.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. The funding thing for sure. Everything else you said as well. I don't know if anyone actually believes the threat thing. I just, that's obviously humans' best tool, like we were saying, like you just said a minute ago. They had to frame it, like Alexander had to frame it like it was a threat. I mean, it does seem to be the only way to get any money, but then let me ask you, segue into the fact that Lou, if you go back and watch every single thing Lou ever said after he left, it's like it doesn't sound like he ever left like any office.
Oh yeah.
So wouldn't it be better to just pitch it to someone who's pretending to be out of the office as opposed to pitching it to just who knows what's going to happen on the internet, and so the evidence goes out to exactly who they want to, or in some manner. But I don't know. I go by my gut on this one, and I'm going to go with what John Greenwald was originally thinking, and how it's there's probably a bigger, just like we're saying right now, the biggest thing is funding, and even if it means kind of misleading the public, as long as you think you're being patriotic about it.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Chase.
Well, I was just going to say, the walrus made an excellent point, and he said, these things are real, and the public is not ready to accept this reality. But just imagine for a minute what it would mean if things were released too quickly, and your local police department, your local law enforcement just didn't show up. Everything would just fall apart, especially here in the United States. So, it's an interesting thought. I think it's slow. It's a slow release of information, framed just the right way, probably utilizing a ton of psychology and social behavior studies to ensure that the population digests this and accepts it at the right rate. over X amount of time, because it really is. I don't think that there's a threat, that there's any inherent threat or risk to our safety as humans. But I think people are going to have a really difficult time grasping that they don't know anything, like you started this interview off, and that they aren't at the top of the food chain, that we're probably not even near the top of the food chain, if there is even such a thing. Yeah.
I just remember my question was, did you see the Elizondo interview with Debrief? I actually did a podcast with Yossi Ronan about it, because he picked it up as well. He contacted me and said, did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? And I said, yeah, I heard what he said. And that was that whole thing where they asked him the question, if this is off-world or on-world. And he said, hang on. And he said, let's just go down the rabbit hole. Let's speculate. It may not be binary. It may be right here. It may be multi-dimensional. And he actually spent like 5 minutes on this whole rant about it may not be off-world. So what did you think when you heard this idea that they may know that this thing is way more complex, and maybe that's what the cover-up is all about? And this, I would answer before I forget again, Jeff's question about, is Elizondo still working? I said this right at the beginning. I did some YouTube videos where I said, if you know how he was under a lot of pressure to produce his retirement letter, or his resignation letter. And then suddenly Chris Mellon's website is open, and there's all this material on his website, and the guy from Great Britain picks it up, downloads it, and then they say, oh, the website was hacked, he didn't have the code, whatever, and all this stuff came out. And one of them was Lou Elizondo's resignation letter. So they said, it's on there. And I said, it's fake. And they said, well, no, it will. I said, let me see show me the video, the retirement thing. And I take a look at it, and it's got like deferred retirement is misspelled. It doesn't have a date on it. So, I mean, how do you resign without a date on the resignation letter? And he resigned to the Secretary of Defense. You don't resign to the Secretary of Defense. You resign to your higher superior in the Department, the Defense Intelligence Agency. You don't resign to the Secretary of Defense. And so when I saw that, then I sort of realized that it was the same game. Like with the story I heard about Semivan. So I talked about Semivan 8 months before I went public with TTSA. So Semivan, the story was that Semivan had the experience. And he went to Ron Pandolfi, and he said, I had this experience with my wife last night. These beings were in the room. And Ron says, you don't need to know. And he said, I don't have a need to know. Bring your boss, and we'll talk about it. And so they bring in Tenet, I think, the CIA director. And he said, leave it alone. There's nothing you can do about it. Pretend it's a one-off. Pretend it'll never happen again. Leave it alone. It'll destroy your career. And the story I was told, whether right or wrong, was that the minute Semivan retired, that's when they gave him the security clearance. And that's what Kid Green says as well, that when you're in the government, you don't have the top security clearance, but when you go to a contractor, then Ron Pandolfi read him in and told him what was going on. And so you get the retired guys. All these things are run by retired guys. They come out, they got the plausible deniability. I'm not really working for the government. And so that's when Jeff was talking about, is he still working? I think, yeah, because he always will go there. He'll say, I still got a security clearance, and I don't want to say this, I don't want to say that. And you can sort of indicate that he has this plausible deniability being retired. But the question is, in intelligence, do you ever retire?
Yeah, that old adage that most of us know from ufology or whatnot is that you never, like an agency man never really retires or whatnot. You kind of you're always there to reference old cases or possibly give up old contacts or whatnot. And to me, and this is nothing against Lou. I feel like, I know this isn't popular to say in 2021. But as a former soldier and as a person that believed quite a bit in like what this country provided for my family and stuff, I can understand where Lou would come from in his absolute look right in the camera and say that he is not, this isn't an operation. This isn't some sort of thing, because that's how easy it is when your ultimate goal is to protect the country. Maybe it is to protect a new technology, or the lore is correct, and maybe we have something that maybe we just figure out how to operate, or we have for years. I mean, if you think about it, I say this all the time, and I know it's been said by many other people. I know it's so obnoxious, but the last time someone who really fit the time with both attire and the way he spoke and the things he was speaking about was Doty, and he was protecting the drone program. I mean, and got a guy with tattoos. He's got a goatee. He's got his sleeves rolled up. He's carrying his rucksack, and he's talking like it is. And he's also got the ability to slide on his glasses to address Congress. He could be a politician. And by God, he does the dramatic glasses pull off 15 times an interview, which to me, as a comedian, I find that to be suspicious. The glasses? He pulls them off and goes like, he's just talking all of a sudden. We might not have any idea what this is. and it's just, I wouldn't Lou or what's ever going on if it was like some sort of miraculous new tech we have. But I've been saying since I was a kid, when are they going to release this triangle aircraft that has the ability to go from like 7,000 feet to a couple hundred feet in a split second, hover silently, make the trees crunch and bend all over like there's some massive force on them, and they just never have. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe you need a unit like ATIP out there to run alongside of other programs to see if the people have the ability to kind of detect your new hardware. You know what I mean?
Or you're bringing in people like Chase. I mean, that's what I sort of think is going on. You need funding that you've got it in the black world. And they always talked about this stovepiping thing, that nobody's talking to anybody and it's not going anywhere. They can't figure anything out. So if you move it into the white world where guys like Chase and people who have maybe some ideas, you get the funding out there and people start talking about it, they're picking everybody else's brain because they just can't figure it out themselves. And you've got to open it up. You got to get some funding in there and bring in some new blood, like this whole thing with the Invisible College. And I always said, like, there's the, I don't know, Semivan said there's over 50 of these people in the Invisible College, and they're saying, well, we can't because we're college professors. And I think, no, it's like, it's number one, they're told to sort of keep secret. And the other thing is that there's patents involved in this, because I know the one patent was sold for the company was sold for $100 million. So there's a lot of money. So if you're working on some principle, are you going to make it public before you get your patent? No, you're going to keep working on it secretly in the background, even you've been hired by the government, because there's a huge amount of money if you can develop any portion of this technology, just the littlest bit of this thing, of the metals and stuff. But I think they need people like Chase. They need people who are very skilled, and they're watching this podcast and all the other podcasts, and they're trying to figure out ideas, pick up ideas that people have. Because that's where intelligence comes from. It doesn't fall out of the sky. They watch people. That's where they get the intelligence from.
Before you, I know you had something to say, Chase. I don't want to cut you off, but before you say it, so even like Ray Hobbs said it, but we're from a different generation, but I'm from a time where that you would go to a paranormal society, you would go to a UFO group in town, you would have these conversations in person, and there'd be people there. There'd be a guy, from Otis Air Force Base just hanging out. And even Ray Hobbs said it, which I thought was hilarious, because I remember people saying, oh yeah, Tony's the guy that comes down here. He's from like Air Force Intelligence. Like they would say that about like certain folk. And like, so these people are sitting there listening to the earliest accounts of ufology. They're sitting there the entire step of the way. If Lou was an operation and all that stuff, it wouldn't be that hard. It really wouldn't. These are just words after all. No one's producing a UFO. No one's producing a Stargate for us to walk through.
I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think there's truth in everyone's perspective on this. And I think it's somewhere in between, or a little bit of both. Yeah, I can't accept that the governments of the world, having clarity on this being very real, having nuclear facilities constantly visited and molested by aerial phenomenon for over 50 years, I can't believe that there wouldn't be an incredibly coordinated, incredibly well-funded, incredibly well protected from an intelligence perspective, like siloing, like you mentioned, Grant. But I just can't believe that wouldn't be the case. I personally believe now, and I didn't at the beginning of this research journey of my own, I personally believe that not just USG, but all of the governments of the world are very much aware of this and understand, at least on some level, and maybe it's only a few people within each organization, but on some level, there is a global group that understands and represents all or most of the governments on this planet, and they know far more than the majority, and they know far more than they're willing to share. The idea that Lou could potentially still be supporting one of those efforts, I don't think is far-fetched at all. and is certainly probably likely possible. Although from the looks of it and based on what Lou said, that's not the case. But no, I think they understand. I think that the real secret here is consciousness itself, and the fact that we're capable of doing things, of changing our lives, of manipulating the way that we perceive the world, and understanding at least a little bit better, what we are instead of what we've been taught we are. I think that's the real secret. And then this other bit is that, we're not the only fish in the sea. Surprise, surprise. All those stars up there that you look at every night, if you have a pretty view of the night sky, it's likely that there is other life. You're not unique, and I think that's a given. It's just kind of a common thing, but common knowledge, but should be anyway. So, yeah.
I once heard a professor say that, like, take everything you see today, and when it comes to the ability from our science community in the hard sciences, and then you try to theoretically find their equivalent in the future, which is even harder to do with regular stuff, but with the quantum world. Sorry for the noise. And whether it be consciousness is everything, and all these experiences are kind of like a mixture of the two, and we don't really know how to articulate it, or it is both, or everything that we're saying right now. One thing is for sure is that that everything that I've seen, and that most people have seen, like the military background, trained observers, is that it does appear to be, in whatever it is, supremely more advanced than us. And that's just, that's cliche to say, but so much more advanced than us. I would be surprised that the same Department of Defense that spends 20 grand on toilet seats would have the ability to know all of this stuff about it. And if the phenomenon is intelligent as what we perceive it, or more, or whatever the hell is going on, do you think that intelligence would then select the most incompetent superpower ever to exist? Maybe not incompetent. Maybe that's a little pessimistic. But I just don't. I think that these aliens are going to come here, and they're going to see us all wasting our time trying to use our minds to project something that it is real. There's something to it, but we're far away from it, and we're just part of this thing. We need to go back to. I personally lean towards, we need to go back towards the nuts and bolts side of it. I know that's so no one wants to hear that, especially not you two. But yeah, I think there's a lot of progress to be made in the idea that quantum technology, or maybe like our guest Mark Fiorentino, maybe just in general, Einstein's physics will make a breakthrough again, and suddenly we'll be able to travel faster than the speed of light, and all types of goofy stuff. Who knows? But I don't know. I just my sightings and some of our guests, I just feel were so physical, so real, that to mix them up with what we know as reality is like bunk to my brain. It just doesn't work. I don't get why it doesn't work. I mean, I could be definitely wrong, but I don't know.
The things you saw, did they stay physical? Because that gets into what all four of us have talked about, is this thing is, how much of the physical world is there physical? So you may have seen the snake, you may have seen the being or whatever, but how long did it stay there? Did it stay in the physical world? Can it come in the physical world, become physical, but does it live in a different world? Because we've done all of us have looked at this psychedelic aspect of it, of consciousness, and realizing that when you start looking at trip reports from psychedelics, it really gets messed up. Forget about your snake. I mean, it's like, people, 1,000 different lives, or the guy, is he's 10 minutes on DMT, and he's gone for 2,500 years, and he puts a forest on the side of a mountain and builds this whole forest, and comes back 2,500 years later. You start to realize, it's like we're totally clued out. And is the physical world really here, or is this just sort of like, as some people say, this is the illusion? This is crazy stuff, and that's why it doesn't fit in.
I don't think it's any realer than the other realities that people describe experiencing. I think it's the same. Yeah.
And where do you think the intelligence is? Do you agree with me that it comes into the physical world, can become physical, but actually lives in a different sort of wherever they're coming from. It's not, they're not, and that's what the other night I was on a thing called Is There Really ETs? And I'm saying, the more I look at it, the more I think they're just making it up. Because in 1890, they said they're from Mars. Then in the 1950s, they said they're from Venus and Mars and Uranus. The Canadians were told they were from Uranus. I remember the metallurgist guy said to me, I'm not stupid. Don't think for 1 second we ever believed it was from Uranus. and then suddenly we realized that there was no life on Mars and Venus. And then suddenly they were from Pleiades and the Andromeda and Zeta Reticuli. And then suddenly we get into multiple universes. And now they're, from a 5th dimension, we're from the 11th dimension. We're from here. You won't understand if we explained it to you and stuff like that. So what's everybody's opinion on where do you think they're actually from? Are they actually planet ETs?
I do find it hilarious, Grant, that you're absolutely right that it never changes. I was just listening to what I'm not that he's not brilliant. I won't even say his name, but he's a person that's getting a lot of attention in this field right now. And he goes on this long laundry list of where they're not from. Oh, I'm so sick and tired of people saying they're from the underground and Mars and Pleiades and here and there. And then he gets done to it. He goes, I think they're from the ocean. I live on a boat, for God's sakes, and yes, I do believe there's some really spooky action going on under the ocean, under the Great Lakes, and just in general because of the geology or something. I don't know, but I just I don't think that they're from. If what's going on in that contact modality that we keep bringing up, like Gallimore, it would be interesting to find out what it would happen being really far off land, because I don't think there's been a lot of experimentation way out in the middle of nowhere on that type of stuff. And there's a lot of theory or hypothesis out there, rather, that it's like, Chase knows it better than I do, like geography kind of affects the entities that you speak to. And I will say that I definitely I saw the same entities in the same spot one time, heard the entities in different spots other times, but I wasn't able to see them, but I was able to see other stuff. So it's very confusing. Of course, it could all just be gobbledygook, but I don't know. I don't know if they're coming from anywhere, and if maybe we are just in the.
Oh, just one point on that: the ocean. They don't come from the ocean. They come from Mount Shasta. We're actually going to interview a guy within the next couple of days who said they live under Mount Shasta, and he was there. And it's like, well, why would you live under Mount Shasta? This is like the stuff they're putting out is like just crazy stuff. And yesterday I have this experience. I had it coming back from McDonald's on my 2-hour walk, and it was like basically got to write a book on talking to aliens. So let me ask the two of you, Desta, I'll get Desta's story too, maybe Desta can jump in. Have you talked to an alien? Have you got a message from an alien? Have you been given direction to get something out? Or you're just having experiences where you're seeing stuff?
I guess I'll take this, Chase, jump in right after me, please. I feel like I'm talking too much. The ultimate message from all of my experimentation down that avenue, there were many times of frustration because nothing happened. I didn't get anything out of it. I felt, you get physiological things that are happening to you along with some visual, but mostly you feel like a goddamn drunk or something, like nothing's happening that's any good to you. But the times that I absolutely either had the right dosage or whatever, and you can't remember it for a reason. I don't know. We talked about this last time, Grant, about the idea that maybe some of these psychedelics are kind of much a slow dive in or slow entrance of the pool and a slow exit. So it's kind of easy to remember and retain the stuff versus say, well, like DMT, I mean, you're on a freaking rocket ship, both directions. And sometimes the information is really hard to take with you. I don't know. I would say that about a quarter of the time, I was basically told to get on this topic, don't get off it, stay on it for some reason. My entire life has been this topic, except I've been afraid to talk about it. God, I mean, I remember just talking to you first when you were connecting all these things to me. All these people have reported wild and strange, just as crazy, varying events. I never put them together. So whatever the entity or whatever my own brain formed into an entity to tell me, it told me 100%, just don't stray away from the one thing that you've been able to have your entire life. I just kind of neglected it. It's like, I don't know, when X-Files went off TV, do you remember the super drop in people that were suddenly involved in the topic? It just shows you pop culture influences people that want to be involved, and you one alien movie and everyone's talking about it. But for me, when I was a child, it was just like, happened all the time. As an adult, through these psychedelics, it was like, do you remember? Start talking. Why are you wasting your time not talking about it when you had all these fucking crazy things happen? Far better than any sci-fi movie. So I don't know. Yeah, I think some of the time, at least a quarter of the time, they're absolutely saying something, although it comes across as a goddamn cartoon.
Hey, so you've had some messages. What did they indicate to you? They wanted you to go public with something?
These experiences are so. I've had one experience in which I felt that there was very direct communication. I've heard language before, although I haven't been able to decipher it or understand it. I actually hear language all the time, but I can never understand it. But yeah, I had one experience in which I was told, okay, look, you want answers. You want to know what you are. You keep asking answers. You want the truth. You want to know what reality is. You can have it, but it means you have to leave all of this. You have to either be one or the other. You can't have both. You can't be Chase and have the answers that you want. And when they told me that, I got frightened. I didn't want to leave my family or my son or anything like that. So it wasn't a negative experience, but it was kind of eye-opening in that at least that was how I interpreted that particular experience. Maybe I misinterpreted the experience. I don't know, but I know I was absolutely convinced that was the correct interpretation at the time. It felt like that they were ready, that they were trying to maintain contact, that even if I didn't completely want it, I wasn't even sure if they were going to let me go. So I don't know, Grant, and then aside from that, I've had the classic alien abduction experience as well, where I'm on my back, seemingly on a table of sorts, bright light over my head, alien looking creatures above me, not the classic grays, doing something to my head, language inside of my head, very distinct, almost physical, as if someone opened up or created a bubble inside of my brain. I know how crazy that sounds, but I mean, those are some of the more, yep, go ahead.
Can I ask you, this is something that I've spoken to people about in the past, and I've noticed a lot of trip reports that describe this type of simulation, and it was so weird because people that played basketball talked about how the first thing they experienced or something was them falling down and tripping in front of a large audience, and because they weren't willing to take the $1 million shot at half court in front of everyone, their trip kind of ended like that. It was, and I've heard so many different variations of this concept of you're presented with something that shakes you to your core, because they realize that the closer you associate, I'm saying they, whatever, the closer
it's something,
the closer you associate experience with an actual physical death, the more you hold on to what you are in this cruel trick of a reality is the more you're going to be presented with the ultimate scare that is. And I don't know, the first major breakthrough I had, that's one of the first things I recognized, is they put you in a scenario that you absolutely look like you're afraid to take, you're being offered something to them is an easy option, but for a human, you're there's no fucking way I'm doing that. Excuse my language. There's no way I'm giving up everything I know, my kids and everything, to go learn what you could take me to another room and show me a slice of pizza with a cat on it. And that's literally could be how ridiculous the experience is. But yeah, I've heard so many variations of that. And I'm not saying I know that's what's happening to you, but
No, I think you're right.
I think even Joe Rogan said that one of his experiences was him on a stage where no one was laughing and he couldn't talk or whatever, something like that. So it was like and then he realized that once he realized it was all like part of the trick they're pulling on me, that it was like, strap in, here we go, boom. And you know, and I don't know, maybe that's what's happening. Maybe, I don't know.
I think after reflecting on that experience after the fact, you know, I think that's probably the right interpretation of the experience. But you know I was really bummed after that experience, because I thought, well, all this research, all this time, all this dedication to try and understanding reality and the nature of the phenomenon is frivolous if this is true, you know. So I was really kind of, it wasn't a bad experience, but after the fact I was like, well, what the F am I doing, you know? I mean, but I think that's the right interpretation, Jeff. Yeah, I think that's actually what happened. Now, with respect to the alien abduction experience, you know, I don't know what to think there. And there's so many other aspects, Grant, Desta, about these experiences.
Yeah. Let me add to that, and then we'll get Desta. Have you heard Desta's story about the being helping her? Did she tell that story? I'll have to get her to tell a story. So anyway, the last couple of experiences I've had, breakthrough experiences I've had, they keep going on about, don't you know who you are? You're special. And it's almost like I should start a religion. And I actually tell them to go reproduce themselves numerous times. And I'm just like, get out of here. Like I made fun of Tom DeLonge and Stephen Greer in Managing Magic, the Messiahs and stuff like this. And I'm getting this kind of stuff. It's like, you gotta, and it's like, I'm talking about it, I'm doing it, whatever. And it's like they make it seem like it's some other religion. You should go start something. You should be like a thing in there. Don't you know who you are and stuff like that. And I just find it so weird. But with you and all these reports is the fact that you realize the key thing to me is that we haven't got a clue. I mean, you see these things and this is not like a dream. You're actually experiencing this stuff and you're going like, what? Even though you're not going to get all the final answers, you realize you don't have any answers, that we are really far out, and that this is a very complex phenomena. As I said, it's less physical than people think it is. It's more spiritual than people think it is. It's at least 1,000 times more complex than people think it is. And Lou, that's why I was so impressed when Lou started that thing. He said, hang on, because they were going, is it on world or off world? And he's going, hang on, there's other options. And he starts going down that rabbit hole and going where I think you got to go is to say, we really don't know. And Lou says that, and I guess maybe you believe him, that when he says, we don't know what's going on. We know, yeah, this is real. We've got these objects that are in our airspace, and he goes through that whole thing. And then he says, but we don't know what's going on. I mean, we don't have any control over this thing. And so that's my experience, is to show that we really don't know. And Desta, tell your story about your being that helped you out, because she had told the story a number of times, and I didn't really realize there was a being that was involved, and that was like communication. Because that's where I'm going with this next book, is looking at actual direct communication, because it appears they've grabbed a bunch of people and they're directing this person here and this person there, and they're giving them a little pieces and they're telling them what to do and stuff like that, which impresses me, because I didn't realize there was as many cases as there actually are. Like Chris Bledsoe with the lady, and he's become like the most famous experiencer of all time. And she said the number one message was when he wouldn't talk for 4 years, and they pull him, and he meets the lady, and she says, you have a burden, it is yours to carry. He still doesn't talk about it. Later in the year, she pulls him again and says, Chris, you have a burden, and it is yours to carry. And I said, do you know what the burden is? I know what the burden is. Sure, I know what the burden is. It's the message. I'm to deliver this message, whatever you think, whatever the message is. So Desta, tell your story about you get helped by, you're on a path the same as us. You're trying to figure it out. You're going through all these courses. Desta's probably taken more courses and read more books than all of us combined. So she did all this kind of stuff, trying to learn this kind of stuff, and you're not getting anywhere. And then they give you some help. Can you tell that story?
So I was living in Vancouver, and I was taking 2 courses at the same time. So the QHHT, which is the quantum healing hypnosis technique course, where you could regress people. And then this is the Dolores Cannon technique, where you can, after you regress them, you kind of are able, they're they're down in hypnosis enough where you're at a stage where you're able to talk to their higher self, their subconscious or whatever. And I took the course because I wanted to be able to do that to myself, because I was not able to be regressed. And so I just wanted to like know the like backdoor, you know, like the loophole or whatever of like, what do you need to do? What do I need to do to be able to talk to my own higher self? I was taking that at the same time I was taking another course, which was about like astral traveling, like how to actually get out of your body. And so I was practicing, well, yeah, I was taking both courses at the same time. So, and they were kind of overlapping in some ways, because it's all about the state of mind you're in, just like contact modalities, right? You have to be in a certain state. And so I was practicing every night, trying to do the mind awake, body asleep, where you fall asleep, you resist the rollover signal that your brain gets, so your body can paralyze itself. So you think that you're asleep, so your mind is still awake, but your body is asleep. And that's when you're supposed to be able to, you know, to roll out of your actual body. In reality, your astral body rolls out of your sleeping body or whatever. So I was not able to do that, but I was realizing, because I happened to be taking both courses at the same time, that what was happening is that I was in a deep enough alpha or somnambulistic state, as Dolores Cannon would say. I was down enough because my body was paralyzed. I was seeing crazy, insane things in the room, not necessarily like the old hag sitting on your chest kind of thing, which a lot of people see, right? Someone trying to strangle them or whatever. I wasn't seeing that, but I was seeing all sorts of things. And my body was paralyzed, but I couldn't roll out of my body. But I was realizing that while I was so, like, while my left brain or whatever was so shut down, is I was thinking that I was going to be able to get to the part where I could start talking to my subconscious. So I was trying to just randomly be like, hello, you know, can someone answer some questions for me? Like, I didn't know even what to do, because I hadn't learned that part, because I hadn't finished the course yet. So I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to be doing, but I was just thinking like, well, I must be in this state because I'm down enough that my body is paralyzed, because my body thinks I'm literally asleep. So maybe I can talk to this other part of myself, but I couldn't do anything. I was just like body paralyzed, and then seeing weird things, and then waking up, and then body paralyzed again. And I couldn't do anything with it. So I kind of, you know, was really frustrated as both processes weren't working at all. And I didn't know what to do for either process to start working. So I kind of, you know, in frustration or whatever, like screamed out to the universe, like, you know, what the hell are you supposed to do? Like, I don't know what else to do. Is someone come and help me, my whoever it is, like someone come help me, because what am I supposed to do? How do you stay in this state? Like, how are you supposed to get to theta? How does this whole thing work? And within an hour, I think it was within an hour, I had an experience where beings came into the room. I only saw one of them, but there was, you know, the feeling of multiple beings came into the room and I've said this story before, so I won't say the whole story, but I mean, to come in to kind of take my brain to show me inside my own brain what it feels like to be able to shut down your left brain enough, or to get into this theta state. They showed me, but more importantly, made me felt what the feeling feels like once you're in that state. So they turned down my brain to do this, but there was a being standing there. Yeah, I think I only talked about once, because I don't think I really heard about that many other beings that were sparkly. So it was a being, and I'd had dreams of this being one other time before as well, which was like a grayish type of being, you know, like a hairless, big-eyed, you know, skinny little being. But this being was like glittering and glimmering and sparkling and like projecting light. So it was like a shimmery, I remember it was like all S's, like when I was trying to remember what he looked like shimmery, sparkly, I don't know, shiny, glimmery, sparkly thing. And that came and touched me on the shoulder and said, oh, you want to know how to get to theta? This is how you get to theta. And then brought me through a series of events that taught me instantly that night. And I was able to not get out of my body. I didn't even care about getting out of my body after that, because I was instantly able to get into the state where I started being able to communicate with my higher self. and that was, I guess, what led to the channeling. But I didn't think it was channeling. I thought it was just communicating with my higher self. But yeah.
And so describe the channeling process, because you use a little bit different than other people. You're using the typewriter. So explain that, or the computer.
So it started with this, just communication. So once I knew what that felt like in my brain of how quiet you needed to be, which was not like the quietness in my meditations before that I was in at different times, it was way different. So once I understood what it felt like to be in that state, it was just very easy for me to get into the state. And then I just started like asking questions, you know, and I was getting answers constantly. It felt like it was my higher self. So I thought that it was my higher self. I thought I was just like asking questions and the answer was instantly there. So no matter what question I asked, I instantly had access to every single question I was asking. I didn't feel like there was another being there. So I just assumed it was just like, you know, how now we would explain it, like I was in, you know, the Akashic records in the field, whatever, you just like ask and here's the answer, ask and here's the answer. And all the answers after a while that I was asking just felt so obvious. I almost got bored of asking questions, because when you get the answer to a question that you think is important when you're conscious and like sober or whatever, like right now, you think it's so important to know what the meaning of life is and all this kind of stuff. But when you're in that state, it seems so obvious because you know all the answers to everything, you have access to them, and you're in a different state. So it started to actually be a little bit boring to me, but I started doing that, just doing it in my head in the night and falling asleep or whatever, and waking up and of course not remembering any of it. And that led to me writing it down, handwriting it down. So I would ask the question, I would go into a meditation, ask the question, they would give me like one line at a time, and I would just slowly be writing it down, which led to writing so fast that I couldn't keep up with the writing anymore. And then I thought, why am I handwriting this? Because you have to open your eyes and use the pen. And it was kind of interrupting the flow because I had to keep trying to write and open my eyes, and I had to have light. So it was like distracting. And so I just thought, why don't I just type? Because I know how to, I know how to type. So then I could keep my eyes closed, ask the questions, and then keep my eyes closed and just type because I know where all the keys are, you know what I mean? So it was like, it would not interrupt the flow as much. So that all led to that, which led to me, eventually asking if I was talking to something or if I was talking to my higher self. And then some of the answers sometimes were that they were other things and it wasn't my higher self, which was surprising to me because I never got the feeling that they were other things. I always thought it was my higher self or just being in the field, just being able to access the information or whatever. But sometimes they did say that they were other things, other beings.
So there you go, Jeff. If you've got questions, you put them to Desta.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is Desta does regressions. So have either of you been regressed to try to uncover memories and stuff like that?
So it's really curious. I didn't know that Desta, you were trained in QHHT or that you were a medium. I had no idea. So I actually have once. I found a woman on TikTok of all platforms that seemed, she was good. It was a QHHT session. I was taken back. The whole time during the session, I questioned whether or not I was pulling the information out of my rear end or not. But when she got to the point where she was supposed to be communicating with my higher self, she asked me if I had previous lives, and I said no. And she said, "Okay, well, why are you here? Where did you come from?" And my response was that I was here to experience individualism, that I'd never experienced that before. I had flashes of being in front of planets and being able to experience experience all the life on those planets. And I also experienced Source, I think, to one degree or another. Cried during the session because I was in the presence of this energy that was so comforting and warm. Yeah, I haven't done that again. So Desta, let me know if you have a calendar and where I can pay you, because I would love to have another session.
Yeah,
one other thing too.
Well, just to mention before you did, Desta, mention your two books. They're on our It's All Connected publishing website. Desta actually wrote 2 books because she had never written a book. So I said, why don't you stick in a book? And I thought it was she got the 2 easiest books to write possible, because all she had to do is just take the transcripts of all the stuff she'd done and put them in there. So she's actually got 2 entire books of all and I would ask her questions, and I guess other people asked her questions, and she would just ask these questions and put the transcript of all the answers in the book. It's actually pretty interesting.
But it actually comes from the same place, Chase, that you're saying. So the channeling actually comes from a place where, just like when you were being asked about the past lives and you think you're just pulling it all out of, it kind of doesn't seem like it's real. Just like how you were also saying much earlier, how, or I can't remember if it was you or Jeff that said it, all the doors in the house slammed. And then you just, like, after the event happens, you start wondering, did I just imagine that? Or after you see a UFO, when you're seeing it, you're like, holy shit, I'm 1,000,000% sure that this is happening. And then, like, hours and days and weeks and years later, you're like, did that really even happen? And this is the same, you're in the same state where when it's happening, you're 1,000,000,000,000,000% sure it's happening. But as soon as you get out of the state, you're like, so that's the same with me channeling. As soon as I get out of the state, I'm like, oh, I just made it all up. I don't even know. None of this is real. I don't trust anything. And just like when you're being regressed, you start seeing things and you're like, well, I see something, but you're like, it can't be. It's like the left brain interpreter, right? Grant can talk about, but it's like it's so opposite to what we're used to thinking. And if you're not really into thinking about this stuff all the time, you just keep thinking like, that's craziness. There's no way that there's something talking to me saying that it's an angel. There's not an angel talking to me right now. That's ridiculous. I didn't even believe in angels. And I had a handful of times where something was saying it was an angel. And I'm like, but that's impossible because I don't even believe in angels. Like, is this a joke? So it's just like, why would I say that to myself? If I am making this all out, why would I say I'm an angel? Because I don't even believe in angels. So I don't understand. So same thing with the past lives. You're in such a weird state, and it's not the same as the state you're in. Like I said, when we're conscious, like right now, 3D world, sober, you're just like, that's impossible. So when you get to that place, it's very hard to hold on to the feeling and the logic behind what you're actually experiencing, because normally we're taught that that's not real. It's not real.
And you know, after my QHHT session, that was the thought I had. I thought, well, you know, the whole point of me investigating this and scheduling the session and going through with this session was to see if there's anything to it, see if I could access past lives or contact my higher self. Why would I lie to myself?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all. And you know what else I wanted to just real quickly mention? You said, you know, at the beginning of this journey of yours that you kind of were screaming internally, like, something talk to me as my higher self, their soul group. I do that every time during these recent experiences, and nothing ever talks to me. It's so frustrating.
That's like when I remember, Chase, I told you I had that really weird, the only trip I had where it was like the entities were upset with me. It's when they yelled, "This is not an experiment," really loud in my ears. Like I heard footsteps and keys jingling. It's like, "This is not an experiment." It's like, whoa. And like I just snapped out of it and instantly thought, okay, I'll stop probing you now, and then took a long break. But you know, Desta, after meeting you and you kind of giving me some, you know, intro instructions and some reading material into meditation and all this stuff, that is one of the weirder parts of the phenomenon that essentially anyone can get into, and it's probably the quickest route anyone, I guess, other than psychedelics. But there is you're talking about not being able to make sense of it when you're out of it, but when you're there, it's almost like the same process your brain uses to send information one side or the other, to think of thoughts, whatever. That's all gone, and it's just like instantaneous. So that's why it's so confusing as to why you know everything while you're asking it and all that stuff. It's really strange how I feel the same exact way, and that's just how it appears to me. But the cryptid rather. It's just this random image generator, and it makes absolutely no sense. It's the only time I've ever experienced in my entire life, other than on psychedelics, where you're not like following a linear fashion to get to your memories. They're coming out, not even memories, I don't know what the hell they are. They're coming out in all directions and making no sense. The other day I was just doing I found the best place for me is to try to meditate about an hour before I want to go to sleep. I almost never sleep. So it's like, it's really easy for me to sit there for like 2 hours in bed and never sleep. So I'm just sitting there in this, in this middle period where it's like, I'm trying to meditate and I'm at the point where I'm like, kind of like my soul knows I'm actually acknowledging that maybe someone else is listening to me ask these questions, but my other side of my brain is like, there's no one listening. Shut up. But I ask, and sure enough, you get this. It's like this random experiencer generator is more what it's like, because I'm sitting right now in a spot that last year in October, I had a UFO. I saw a UFO fly out of the sky. It changed to a red and green light, flashed all crazy, and then disappeared behind the boats. And another old man saw it. And meditating, I'm thinking about, my relationship problems or whatever the hell you're trying to get out of your head while you're trying to get to that point where you're quieted your brain down and you're in that black room, as it feels like to me. And suddenly I find myself like on a roller coaster feeling. I literally feel like I'm on a roller coaster. I'm seeing it, and there I am in the place of the UFO that I'd seen those years ago. And I don't know if people are able to do this. Maybe my mind's broken, but I wasn't even able to picture myself meditating until I used VR for like an hour. And that's I'm not even kidding too. I tried so hard for weeks on end, months, to just be able to picture myself sitting on the bed or in this room or whatever. It never happened, not once. Day after using VR, I've suddenly got this ability to be float, weightlessness. It was just this kind of weird way to perceive in your brain that you're no longer in the physical. And when you're using VR in certain games, you obviously don't feel your body weight. You don't feel any of this stuff. So it feels very similar. You're like kind of just in this space, and it's only your brain working. It has nothing to do with anything else. And
explain what this process is for us who don't know what's going on here.
The process of getting there?
Yeah, well, the Desta showed you this thing. What are we talking about here?
Well, first, Desta you did recommend me a few different routes, but a lot of, in there's obviously varying opinions. I've heard Sean Cahill say this is the wrong way to go, but then again, I've had no success the other way. So I tried binaural beats, literally blasting myself with like some whatever hurt. I don't know which one works, but for hours on end, because I didn't know what to do. And then I just slip away into kind of really listening to the noise over anything else, like Desta told me to do. And it was completely random. It took about 2 months, but randomly I would just see some crazy thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
a weird. Talking about the VR? Are you talking, Grant? Were you meaning? Yeah. It's the VR he wants you to explain, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry, but what happened when I used VR?
What is VR?
Oh, virtual reality. If you. A lot of people experience that same, when they put on VR, it's like the first time in their life their brain and their body has ever been separated while they were conscious. So you get these videos, these internet videos of people playing a boxing game, and they go and punch the freaking TV in half. They run over and fall down in the mall in front of 50 people. They completely have disassociated their body with their brain for the first time ever.
Okay. And
that's what happened to me the reverse way. The first time I used VR, I thought, oh, you can kind of really visualize being weightless and try to meditate. It's kind of goofy, but it works.
Oh, okay. Wow. Have you been regressed?
No, but even Kathleen Martin said I probably should, but I don't know. There's some spooky stuff that happened during that triangle encounter, and I don't think I want to know if there is anything. And I don't want to lead myself, and I don't know if that's actually what happens, but I don't want to know.
What do you think about that leading? Because you went through it, Chase, in terms of you think that you're making it up or whatever, but you are actually, are you being led? Because you hear this stuff about hypnosis, that people are being led and they're being ideas put in their head. What do you think about all that?
I think it's possible for someone, but honestly, I really don't know, Grant. I think Dessa could probably talk to this better than me. But it seems like maybe there's a misconception about what imagination really is, and then this would connect to what dreams actually are, and how all of these experiences that we all have are connected and not separate. I'm not sure. I mean, I can imagine myself as Batman, but I don't know if that means that I'm actually Batman.
Okay, so let's let Desta ask it, because Jeff has this concern about, being led and this kind of stuff. And you know all the protocols. So describe how we avoid this.
Avoid what? Sorry.
The idea where you're putting ideas in people's heads. People think that you're, the master and you're making people believe all this kind of stuff. What kind of protocols do you have when you're doing your hypnosis stuff to make sure you're just getting the story rather than leading the witness?
Well, I actually just had a client yesterday or the day before, and I understood something that I haven't thought about before, which is this is the well, okay, sorry, I won't say this is a problem, but in my opinion, it is so insanely easy to lead the person that, and David Jacobs, and we've talked a million times about how putting ideas of your own belief system as a practitioner into your client's head is obviously setting them up for the evil alien or the good alien kind of thing, right? So and I really noticed this recently with a client I just had, and the whole thing is, I guess the main thing is you're trained one way, and as a practitioner, you assume that the practitioners have very high ethical, moral standards of what they're going to do. But the thing is, it's so easy to lead the person. So, I mean, yeah, we have protocols, QHHT. I mean, they tell you stuff. So you're supposed to be following those protocols. You're not supposed to be leading anyone anyway. It's not about you, writing a book like Dolores Cannon did. She wasn't planning on writing all those books, right? She just took the transcripts of everything she was doing. But it's so easy to lead the person. And I can see if you were looking for something as a practitioner and weren't holding yourself to those high standards, you're supposed to be following protocols, but I mean, it's very easy for people not to be doing it because they want to find out something. They want a message. This woman I was just regressing a couple of days ago was giving me messages and saying like, oh wait, this is not my guide talking. This is for Desta. And she just kept saying, Desta, oh, this is your guide. This isn't even my guide talking. Your guide wants to give you information. And I was just thinking, if I was not holding up to the protocols in my own standards, I could just thought, okay, give me more information. Oh, you're talking about me now? Okay, well, ask them this, ask them this, ask them this. I could have been doing anything. And so it's so easy for practitioners to be doing that. So it's really, I mean, you just have to trust the person you're with and hope that they don't have any ulterior motive, I guess. And that's a horrible thing to say because I'm sure most people don't, but yes, it is very easy to lead people. And that's why you just always have to have the questions has to not be like, do you see a UFO? Is there anything in the sky? You can't lead them at all. You just have to say like, what do you see? But if you were to say, look up, do you see, is there anything in the sky? Right there is setting them up to say like, oh my God, I think it's a UFO or it's a light in the, you're anything that you say. So it's very hard not to lead people, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So Jeff has the other concern that there may be something behind the triangle that he saw that he doesn't want to know. So what happens when you run into a client that suddenly is in a very traumatic spot? How do you deal with that?
Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter how good of a practitioner you are. If the person does not want to give you the information, they won't. So it's not like, and a lot of people are very wary of that. And they call and they say like, how many sessions have you had? Because they say, I can't get regressed. So are you going to be able to regress me? And it's like, well, I'm not magic. Like if you don't want to be like, I guess I didn't want to be regressed before. Yep. I didn't know that. I wanted to be regressed. I paid tons of money to go to many, many regressions and I couldn't do it. So I couldn't blame the person for not being able to do it. I wasn't comfortable enough to let myself be open enough. I didn't trust the person enough. They didn't do a long enough induction. Like, I mean, I have a whole bunch of theories now why it didn't work. And I had to practice myself to let myself be able to be open enough to, to let it go. But I mean, if you don't want to see something, it doesn't matter what the practitioner says, you're not going to see it. You have to want to see it. You have to open yourself up enough. You have to want it enough. So you have to be ready for it, definitely. You can't make them see something if they don't want to. But if the person's in a traumatic position, like this person that I just did a couple of days ago, it was a very traumatic experience. You're supposed to instantly say, you don't have to be inside, you know, so we're doing a past life or whatever. You say you don't have to be inside your body to be seeing this. Take yourself out of the body and just watch it like you're watching a movie. So take yourself out of this is not happening right now, right? You're lying down in bed. You're just having a past life right now. So take yourself out of the body of your past life and just watch it and tell me what's happening. You don't have to experience any of the trauma or whatever the experience is or whatever. You just take them out of their body so they're not. And she was like, whew, good thing you did that. And she was crying. She was bawling. She started bawling in one split second. And I was like, okay, you don't have to stay in there. Just take yourself out and watch it. And she's like, oh, thank God. That was so uncomfortable. So, and people can do it because again, you are leading them. You're leading them by saying, get out of your body, and they do it. That's how easily it is. And you can say, go back into the next life, and they'll do it in a split second. That is how easily it is, how easily people are led, is that whatever you say, they do. But you can't get anything out of them if they're not comfortable doing it, or they don't feel safe and all that kind of stuff. So,
wow.
It kind of reminds me of all the cases, and maybe that's what my problem is. Maybe it's not so much that I think that I'll be led, because our guests, like, Calvin Parker and Terry Lovelace and all these guys talked about how they're still in complete control. And like, I'm a fool. So the first thing I think years ago when I hear about regressive therapy is I'm like, it's a stage hypnotist who's now trying to take it into the ufology thing. So I feel foolish, but even like Calvin Parker said too, wasn't it Jacobs back in the 70s? He said, if you make me look like a fool, my friend's got a Louisville Slugger. I swear, like, it's because honestly, I sound ridiculous, and I feel I kind of ashamed for saying it, but the night sky is so crazy beautiful up here that honestly, I don't see myself feeling less nervous under. It's so crazy. I feel like a fool saying it out loud. Sorry, there's a tractor driving by me right now, but quite literally, I couldn't imagine me telling Desta in one of these sessions about, because there is some spooky stuff that happened. My mother and I talk about it all the time nowadays, how I just kind of found myself on the other side of her in the middle of the event. And sorry, excuse me, there's a tractor quite.
We can't hear it. Don't worry. We can't
okay,
hear it.
And I just, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't imagine opening up like a can of worms and suddenly maybe not just finding out about myself, but giving myself another reason to think at any minute. I mean, my sighting happened in a split, my experience. This thing was passenger plane height and then over our heads in a blink of an eye. So therefore it has the ability to do whatever it wants. For someone who is already nervous under a huge full sky of stars, I don't know how I'd feel after aggressive, some sessions where, well, I don't know. Can you do it over Zoom, Desta?
Well, let me ask a related question. First, I want to know what your mother thinks, and after all this has gone on, where she is. But now I forgot my train of question. You're doing the PTSD thing, and you know the thing with the PTSD that you like with when you're using psilocybin, that you releases it. That unless you address it head on, it's always going to be haunting you. It's the idea where you see the evil alien in your dream or whatever. If you run away, it's game over. If you walk up and give it a big hug and kiss, it disappears. It'll change into a positive being and give you a message. Isn't that part of what you have to address? Maybe that's why the PTSD is an issue that people aren't addressing it.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. They have shown that with I think the majority of people, when it comes to, I don't know about PTSD symptoms that have derived from war or combat, but certainly I've watched long studies and read the research papers of like putting people in virtual reality and having them swim with great white sharks because they can't step a foot in the ocean because they think they're going to be mauled instantly. So these neuroscientists are using it, and it works great. And you add that with psilocybin, of course. And when I did my psilocybin trials, during the trials and right afterwards, I felt great. It was, well, actually I felt physically sick usually after each time, but between things, I felt great. But I don't know. Maybe you're right, Grant. I mean, I still spend every chance I can under the stars. I travel this country nonstop to do just that. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm afraid to look up, because that's literally all the time. And when you're on a boat, you can't go anywhere. You know what I mean? You're in the middle of nowhere and you're sailing. You're moving so slow that just to go from one island to another island, you're out there for 24 hours or something. So you're in it. There is no getting away if you wanted to. There's no rolling up the car doors, and or Windows, whatever. But yeah, I'd consider getting a regressive therapy if if it was from someone who actually cared about what they were doing. I'm sure Desta is absolutely brilliant at it. I didn't know you did that, but it just makes, I don't know.
That's a place to go. That's one thing we can look at. But in terms of let's sort of shut her down, and because Chase is off doing something, maybe in his remote control car.
No, that's okay. I can keep going if you guys want to, but definitely would like clarification from Desta if she can do that via Zoom. That's how mine was done. So let's get like 1,000 scheduled sessions on Desta's calendar for her. Me, one of them.
Can I answer your last thing real quick before we go? Is that you asked me something that's actually kind of important to me. Is that the one person in my entire life when I was a kid growing up, and even in the military and becoming a trained observer and knowing what's out there in our adversary's arsenal, is that the only person I really wanted to care that this stuff was happening, because she kind of believed in some of it, was my mother. And you asked earlier what my mother's process was. My mother avoided it because she didn't want it to come back. She was a firm believer that you think about this thing and it is going to come back. It will be here again to mess with us. And don't bring it up. Just like the Ouija board. She had an experience when she was a kid with a Ouija board, and she never stopped talking about the Ouija board her entire life. I'll never use one again. But it changed her dramatically, but she has the ability to just don't think about it, keep going. It hasn't affected my life in that manner. But if you go to a Strange Recon YouTube page, you can see a quick little 1.5 minute, 2 minute account of my mother's reaction and her story or account of the thing. And she reacts just as you would expect. She ran for her life, but she didn't freeze. She's got the flight or fight. She chose to flight, but it's very, very typical of what people react when they see a triangle up close or UFO up close.
Wow. I wanted to ask you guys where you're going with Recon. You're going to help me with the Gallimore. I think I have one more with the psychedelic, one of the other top psychedelic people in the world that I'm going to get a chance to interview. You guys join me for the interview and address some questions?
I'd love to.
And what are you doing for Recon? What do you got planned for say Recon and your own personal search? Have you got anything on the horizon that you're planning to do?
Well, can I just real quick again? I want to say that that part of the things that I'm doing with the vessel here with Wintune is that I also have a little program. It's word of mouth right now. It's to help veterans with PTSD. We bring them on. We bring them leg to leg. We sail around. It's kind of like an or a PTSD treatment. It's just it's a good way to distract combat veterans. And alongside of that, I have a GoFundMe set up, and it's on our YouTube page for one of our translators who's stuck in the Middle East. He's been there for years. We just kind of left him behind. And of course, he's been on the run with his family ever since. That's just what happens when you're a translator in your home country. You become the enemy. His name is Abbas Alamiri. He could use literally $1. He could 50 cents. Go to his GoFundMe. I'll send you guys the link at the bottom of the thing. But anything just to get him here, if you could, it'd be great. And as for the research vessel grant, we're going to be diving and spending every minute we can in these famous places like in Lake Superior on the East Coast and the Southern Atlantic, Northern Caribbean, and then out the gate to the Pacific, and hopefully to go really as close as possible to some of these islands where they've been known to see these anonymous lights coming out of the ocean. And hopefully we'll be there to catch it on camera, experience it, maybe get some CE5 people aboard, just summon these things for us. Anything. We're just keeping the topic going.
Wow, you can ask Desta the direction. She'll do her little channel and she'll tell you which way to go and where they are.
Come sailing, Grant. This summer, I will be way up by you guys. There's a state park right. It's not in Canada, but it's up there. I think it's Island Press State Park. I don't know. It's got some amazing geography under the. It's got all these crazy triangular pits that are natural in the rock that we're going to go dive and go film and stuff. They're really cool. And but it's right up there by Duluth. You're not that far, right?
We're a little bit west of Duluth. Yeah, they're a little bit southwest. Yeah, that's pretty close to us.
3 or 4 hours. I mean, take a trip, come sailing.
We'll do it.
I'll provide the drinks and food.
We'll do it. So what are you filming? Like, are you working for a production team or what are you doing?
No, actually, my days in television, I don't know if I mentioned that, actually are over. So we're just trying to create an archive for our own channel. We would just love to get as much as we can, as many interviews as possible with all the greats. And just, there is no other paranormal podcast on a boat. And there's no other paranormal podcast diving at some of these locations that people, post every single day on all these Facebook groups. Look at this crazy geography under the water here in Google Earth. Someone's got to go down there. No one ever goes down there.
There you go. Okay, we'll join you and we'll help help your guy get over. Don't worry. Chase, have you got anything you're looking at and you're doing here in the near future?
I'm still, as we've discussed on your show, Grant, as well as Strange Recon, I'm still focused on further developing the sensory platform for the X100 for the expeditionary vehicle. I'm going to work with Jeff on that stack, that instrumentation stack. Once it's finalized, try to duplicate it, maybe minimize it, simplify it a bit, but get it critiqued and get a functional stack on his boat as well, assuming we've discussed it before. I think he's still open to that. Aside from that, most of my time is spent with the phenomenon and experimenting with the things that we've discussed and trying to get some resolution or at least talk to my higher self or something. But so far, no luck. I have, initially I talked to Dusty about this over email a month or so ago, and I said, there's a lot of anxiety, and I've lost the majority of that. So, I'm not quite as hesitant as I was. So hopefully that's helpful. I think I just need to work on the methodology, and really looking forward to collaborating with you and Desta and Jeff on discussions with Gallimore. And, Jeff and I almost had Strassman on, but he canceled on us last minute. His excuse to us was that he was kind of taking a breather, but I saw him on the circuit, on the podcast circuit, not too long after that. So I think he told me that he might have been
scheduled so many. That's what it was. He scheduled so many. He wasn't, and we're not big, so we're growing.
Yeah, I think. Let's see if I can just drive through this abandoned field. Fields are typically abandoned, aren't they? I'm really looking forward to potentially having an opportunity to collaborate with you guys and ask Gallimore some questions. And I also hope that we could have a discussion with Strassman. I know based on the last book that he published, or I assume based on the last book that he published, that he's made this very strong religious connection between the experiences that at least he's had while experimenting with this substance. So I'd like to get his take on some other paranormal things. My guess is that he hasn't had any paranormal experiences, but I hope to be proven wrong. So that's kind of where I am. Yeah.
Did you say you don't think Strassman has? Because I think Strassman's probably had more than anyone.
The famous one, the one in the book apparently is him. The one, the one with the coming out of the waterfall, the fire waterfall or whatever, and saying, "Now you see, now you see, now you see." Apparently, that's why he started the whole thing, because he had his own experience. He keeps someone denies it, but one podcast I heard him say, "Yeah, it was him."
Yeah, and and this is nothing against him or anything like that, but when I just generally get this high intuitive feeling when I look at him, he is a man that has done some experimentation. When I saw his most recent video, he looked like he was on his 5th pot of coffee. It was 9 a.m. and he was wearing a t-shirt that had been so faded there was holes in the neck. This guy's definitely, he's been down the contact modalities route in this field, that's for sure, a couple times.
Super. So we'll set up with Desta for at least Chase to do, and make sure you tape it just in case. You never know, it may be something that you want to broadcast to really up your channel. And
yeah, I'm open to that. There's nothing to hide. I think, and I would love Desta if you have the time. Jeff and I are willing to pay whatever your fee is. I would love to go through a session with you, and I would really be interested to see how that goes for Jeff as well.
And she can do healing too. So if you need some healing, she can do healing. Desta is very quiet. She always stays in the background, just stays off camera. If you've ever seen her book collection and the number of courses she's taken, I'll guarantee you she's done a lot more than any of us have in terms of training.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know when the world's going on. I think we all need a little bit of healing, Desta, so we can use that too.
Okay, thanks, and I'll update you on the other. I've got some other people that are Peak. I think is one of them. Anthony Peak. I've got an interview with him, so I'll bring you in on all the ones that into this contact modality stuff, where you can sort of input your stuff.
Well, thank you very much, Grant, for having us on. You know, of course, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You've been an idol of mine for a long, long time, and you know, I appreciate if any of your viewers go over to Strange Recon, understand that we're new. We've got no, we have a $0 production, and but we do, you know, we have a lot of integrity for the topic. We're both experiencers. We make a lot of jokes, and we, you know, sometimes we poke fun, but we are absolutely 100% determined to either be there when it happens, be a part of the reason why it happens, or just be around to try to understand it with everyone else. And yeah, so come check us out, Strange Recon, YouTube, anywhere a podcast can be found. Like I said, we're new, but we're hungry.
Wow, I'll do whatever I can to help you, because I enjoyed being on, and I'm going to actually go. Next thing I'm going to do, and my thing is go and see Desta's interview. I want to see what you talked about.
Oh, it's a great interview. It's a great interview. Such a great
It's a
call.
great interview.
Yeah.
If you like hearing really, really basic questions asked to someone who knows so much more.
No.
That's
It's a great interview.
And I'm a fool.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to add, Desta, before we shut down?
No, it was so good to be here with all you guys. It was a great discussion. So thanks for having me as well.
Okay, thanks a lot, and we'll give us details on the boat when you're going to be in our area here, and we're going to be down in I'm in Illinois in August, but we'll catch up to you on the road.
I'll be up here all the way till hurricane season. I got to get south after hurricane season. Okay. All right, great talking to you guys.
Beautiful. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you,
Bye,
Desta.
guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Bye, Desta.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Take it easy, Chase.